Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live stream special. That's right. When my technical problems are sorted, we will be back properly live. But this episode was too important to wait. We had to get it down because I frequently get asked by architectural professionals, part ones and part twos, who think, oh, I quite like the world of real estate. That's where I want to be. How do I get there? And the answer, it isn't straightforward. It's very different for everyone. And that is why it is always good to ask those who have done that journey how the heck to get there. And on that note, I have someone with me who's done this journey, the fantastic Aqeel Sourjah from Quadrant. Aqeel, how are you today? Are you okay?
Hi, Stephen. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for being here. Now, before we begin, because me and you, we've had one or two chats before. We're still learning more about each other, but we've had a few chats. However, the audience might not have met you and might not encountered you online on LinkedIn or whatever. So first of all, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. Can you give us a quick overview of who you are?
Yep, fair enough. Like Stephen just alluded to, started off my career at working as an architect, qualified as RABA Part 1, and then decided that I wanted to be a bit of a control freak myself. So thought I'd be on the other side where I'm exposed to all aspects of a building. Did a master's in real estate a couple of years ago at Westminster, and then started working for Quadrant. And now here I am. I work as a development manager for Quadrant and helping them basically deliver, stabilize, asset manage their currently over 600K over the central London office space, and hopefully more in the future.
Wow. We're going to get all to that. It sounds really exciting. But let's wind the clock back, because you mentioned University of Westminster. You were doing that course. So what was the case for you? Were you working in architecture practice for a little while, learning, and then you thought, oh, maybe I'll look into real estate? Or was it always the case that you thought, do you know what, that's where I want to be?
Funny you'd ask this, because when I first finished A-levels, high school, my parents asked me, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, I actually don't know. I'm not too sure. I've always had interest of buildings, nice spaces, etc. And just to give some background, my parents were also from a very finance background as well. They were bankers. So they were sort of trying to get me into that. And I was sort of the dark horse, I guess, or like outlier. And I decided to get into architecture because I liked it. Studied in Sri Lanka for like 3 years, worked in Sri Lanka for two afterwards. And then, after that bit of work, I was like, I think I need something in between, something a bit more client side, more something that I have a bit more, bit more. I wouldn't say control, but bit more overview. It's like doing a lot of things and getting a project through from the initial appraisal to the final sale. So through the entire life cycle of a different project. So I wanted to be in that sort of position. So hence why it was like, and I've been quite, being in a family full of bankers. The dinner table is always about economics, how the market's moving, etc. And no one was really talking about design. So we ended up, so this was sort of like a good in-between space for me, where I still had my design, where I could input a bit of design, not as much as an architect, who I tell all my architecture friends, I commend them for doing the entire journey. But it wasn't really for me. So I ended up moving into the whole real estate spectrum, which I think is quite interesting, and I've really enjoyed it thus far.
Fair enough. And we're going to get on to what you enjoy in a second, but just what I'd love to know now. So you kind of decided, right, that's where I want to go. That's what I'm looking for. How did you get there? What was the process like for you? Okay, was it a case of applying, not hearing back? Was it a case that you would message people? How did you end up working at Quadrant in essence?
So I ended up because I wanted to see what this whole industry was about, and because like I said, I had this idea of getting into the client side and understanding it, being part of that entire process, but I didn't know what it entailed. So I thought the first thing would be to do is get some idea. So I sort of enrolled to a master in real estate development at the University of Westminster in the beginning of 2022. And then basically, went through it, started loving it. And lucky for me, I had a really good tutor called Johanse Harper, who was a partner in Quadrant. So he used to teach us property finance and property development, which were my two favorite courses. And he, midway through the second semester, he called me and he was like, "Yo, there's a potential gap that you could maybe slot into, maybe a couple of week internship to start with. We see how it goes. Are you interested?" And I was basically in my third semester trying to write my dissertation, and I was like, "Yeah, why not?" Ended up getting into Quadrant. 2 weeks in, 2 weeks turned to summer. By 5 weeks in, the managing team of Quadrant were like, "Yeah, if you like to stay, you can have the job." So ended up from the bottom, but now been progressing ever since. And now I've been in Quadrant for about a year and a bit now.
Nice.
And I've not had any complaints so far.
Still,
and I don't think so. It's a lovely team here, so I don't think I'll have it in the future as well.
Excellent. That's interesting. So one of the things I gained from that is, so you took it upon yourself. So you did the architecture part and you went, you know what, I'm thinking of going towards real estate. And so actually that degree, that master's, the degree that you did at Westminster, by you doing that, it kind of introduced you for your tutor who mentioned about the other things. So it was like that chain of effects, really.
Exactly.
So do you think then that would you recommend, first of all, people who are interested in going in this direction, do you think that the course, the Masters of Real Estate Development, was something that was really useful?
I believe so. It sort of, because coming from a background in architecture, the first thing I told my parents the first day I was at uni, I was like, yeah, this is not anything I've done before, because it's more of the other subjects that you don't usually do as an architect student, which is, I think, is like, as being having studied for a bit as an architect, I believe is quite important as well. But that's to keep putting that aside. Yeah, it was a completely, so I would suggest yes, because it gives you a good breakdown, especially moving in from architecture, like things as simple as just accountancy, principles, the laws behind it, you know it, but it's quite helpful. So that was a really good point. And also, I think it helped me sort of create different connections within the industry as well, because you're in career fairs, you're meeting different people, coming to give you different lectures, who are like Johan said, who's part of the industry. They're doing it every day, and you actually see what they're doing, and you understand whether you actually like it, because you don't know what you like until you actually get there and do it for a few years. So that was a good sort of dip my toes in. I still have my architecture thing if I need to, but this was sort of like a good beginning to understand what the career would be and how it looked like.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. I've often found that there's some people, right, when they fancy, maybe they've had a bad day in the office, and they go, screw this, I want to work for a developer. But as you know, it's not suited for everyone, right? It's like the best job for people that want to do certain responsibilities. As you mentioned, I think you touched upon earlier, overview, but it's very different than the traditional role of an architect. You're still in design, but it's very different. Maybe what would be really cool for the listener is if you could kind of paint the picture of what your role at Quadrant is like, and then they can start to get a feel for it. Do you think you can give me like a bit of an overview of what the day-to-day is like? What's your involvement in projects and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, no, I just to pick up on one of your points you made earlier.
Yeah, please.
My job doesn't involve a lot of design. So if you are, I guess, an architect, or if you're a designer who really loves that designing part, I did as well, but it doesn't go into the intricate. We look at a project and we say, okay, you could potentially do these, but we don't go into the detail of it.
Yeah.
So if you are something like someone who really likes design and space, it's not what you would expect. I like numbers and design, so it sort of works for me. But going back to your question, I guess my day-to-day job would be, I'm sort of like a jack of all trades, I would say. I wouldn't know the answer for everything. And to be honest, even I'm not a jack of all trades. Yet I'm still learning through the entire process. But I guess for example, my day could be where I'm at a site going through with the architects, contractors, what we're doing for a finish of a wall, or just going through the specs of a design, through the whole development process, to going into, I don't know, a leasing meeting with the agents, figuring out who our potential tenants are going to be, what they want, etc. Then, I don't know, speaking to our funders who have questions about what the money, how the money is being spent. So it varies. So, like, one of our partners who used to at Quadrant would say, you're sort of the CEO of the project. So you've got this army of really experienced, really really smart people telling you what's happening, and your sort of job is to like manage them, make sure everything's happening properly, make sure your funders are happy, make sure the contractors are doing on site doing what's supposed to be done, making sure the project management team's sorting that up, like managing all of that. So it's just relying on a lot of good people to basically do your job, and making sure like you push everyone's boundaries by asking questions. It's sort of like trying to get the best out of everyone and best out of every scenario, and a lot of problem solving. So so again, to add to that bit, some of my colleagues I work with on the development team, we always joke about how we are going from one fire to another, basically firefighting. So if you like that, if you like solving a problem, seeing what the scenario, figuring out a way through some really complicated scenarios, this is definitely something you'd like. Again, I add to it. Architecture school basically gave you that basic learning as well, through like critical thinking and things like that. So that helps that you could take that through to a job like this. So
very cool. It's quite dynamic, isn't it? And while you were talking, I had a little bit of eye candy in the background of some of the projects. Now, maybe you could, because when I grew up in Wales, right? And there was a big shopping centre called the Quadrant, and everyone used to go out to it. So that might be connected, that might not be. But I thought initially a lot of the work that the Quadrant does is retail, but I can see from here you do loads of different stuff, right? So are you involved in different sectors, different projects of work at the moment? Listen, you don't have to break any NDAs. I don't want you to get any trouble here. But is it a case that you get to see a lot of different projects then at Quadrant at the moment?
I primarily work with the Central London office team. So we've got a team that does. So we are. I would sort of describe Quadrant as an opportunity-led developer. So we look for opportunities around London, around UK, and then pitch it to different investors and try and develop different asset classes. So I don't, to be honest, I do not deal with the retail park side of the business, but my focus is basically central London. So it could be getting a thing like YY, which you can see in the image right now, developed, or basically looking at potential opportunities to convert of old officers into other users and things like that. So I basically focus most of my time on opportunities like that.
Yeah, very, very cool. I mean, it looks very, very interesting. And so I think you've painted a good picture on it. So especially when you're entering the profession, you've got a year under your belt now as well. It's very dynamic. You're learning a lot as well. One of the things that I've heard some people get thrown off by is the job titles per se. People go, "Oh, what's this? What's that?" Now, my understanding is very different. The job titles in basically real estate, depending on the company. I mean, is that what you found as well? Is there such a thing as a technical manager, development manager, project manager, procurement manager, all this stuff? Like, what's your opinions on that? Because I see some people go, "Oh, I can't apply for that because I'm not a technical delivery manager."
I agree that there are some nuances for these different job roles. So, for example, as development manager, we sit on the client side, acting on behalf of a client or an investor, managing everyone else. And then if you take someone like a project manager, they handle most of they sort of represent us, the client, on the construction element of it. And so it depends on what your interests are at the end of the day. Design managers, again, a different role. They would be either on the client side or the contractor side, or just managing the design. So like there is it. I guess it's what coming in from architecture. It's what you like about architecture and what you picked up, and then translating it into a role, to one of these roles, basically. So like I said, I like numbers and design, so, and being quite a control freak, so hence why I guess development management works for me. But yeah, you might have someone who likes the detail of things or the intricacies of things that could potentially go into a different thing. So it's about, I guess, finding what you like, because you at the end of the day, if you're thinking of coming out of architecture, you're looking at you probably like something. You did architecture for a reason, so you probably like an element of it. It's about translating that, because I didn't actually realize how much different nuances between the roles were until I actually got into the job, and I was like, oh, this is what you do, and which is cool. Like, I would not be able to do that job because it's not my expertise, but different people have their different sort of expertise, I would say. Which is something you need to figure out while doing the job, or figuring out what you actually like.
Yeah, I think that's really comprehensive and really useful. So it's kind of researching the roles, seeing what might lean to your strengths and going for it. And the last question I was going to ask on the subject is, so, okay, you went to that course, worked hard, you met your tutor. Your tutor was like, it might be a job here. You had to interview it. You had to impress them. It's been hard work, all that stuff. But let's pretend you didn't have that opportunity and you didn't catch it, you didn't seize it, okay? But now you've kind of learned a bit in the industry, because you are in the industry, right? So what advice do you give someone? Is there any tips that you think that people make all the time trying to get in the industry that you can share with anyone to save them time?
I think something I find very interesting is the connections you make. It's the genuine connections, not the usual networking that you see where you go from one thing to another. It's the genuine connections you make within the industry would come a long way, because at the end of the day, we are an industry full of different people. It's a relationship based one. So I think that's something that as a student, I encourage like coming in, like being an year in the industry. If I'm looking back, I'm glad that I did it, and I every time I speak to someone who's looking into the industry, I would say make those connections, speak to different people, see how they, because everyone have their own way of getting to different places, have their own like way of like I have development managers who've been architects. I know development managers who just who've been coming through a completely different path. So it's there's no one sort of formula. It's just getting to know people and speaking. Like you never know who would be interested in giving you an opportunity and moving, like getting you through that first hurdle of getting through the door, which I believe is the hardest point. Because as long as you get in through the door, you work hard, you prove your worth, people are going to reward that, which is what I found. So it's just getting through that door is the biggest hurdle. So you just have to keep meeting people, speaking to people, getting that's it's not the most easiest thing to do for a lot of people, even me, but it is something that's quite important in getting any job, I would say, not just in real estate, but because when you have people in your corner, it opens up a lot more doors.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and that leads me on perfectly, because what I was going to ask the next question is, so the jump from architecture to development is quite an arduous one and difficult for many, and lately I've been speaking to people that say it's maybe a bit easier to do it early in your career than later, right? So that's great there, but you also did another very, very difficult thing, because you're an international student, right? And the other problem that I encounter a lot is the catch-22 chicken and egg thing of getting your first job in the UK because you don't have UK experience. And I think a lot of people, very talented people, because you were practicing architecture as an architect in Sri Lanka, right? So you've got all that experience, but then you come to the UK and there's that like resistance. It's hard. There's the barrier to get in there as well. Do you have any like thoughts or advice around that subject as well, being an international student or an international professional trying to get work in the UK?
I think I think it's sort of repeating myself earlier. It's just basically trying to get in through that door, because the standards of your different countries are can be similar or different to the UK. And like you said, getting that initial experience when even if I had worked a few years, but even when I went into a few architecture related interviews, there were questions that I could not answer because it was not the usual standard of things that you have in the UK. So it is a bit of a chicken and egg, I would say. But like, hence why sometimes I think it's important to grab any opportunity you get, because sometimes I've spoken to different people who work for a while and they don't want to go be down slightly just to come back up, down slightly in terms of job titles or work, because they've already had the experience. But I think it is quite important what I tell them, and what I believe is it's quite important to, even if it's like a little bit of a setback, you're in a new environment, new country, new way of doing things. Even a little bit of setback, you could basically not a setback, I would say that's the wrong way of deciding, but little way of a downgrade. It would I guess it helped, doing that and then working your way up is much. It comes quickly, because once you're in, and if you pick up things quite quickly, people will recognize you and obviously give you the the relevant responsibility, and then it can help you progress. So it's just getting that foot in the door, speaking to people, understanding how they've got there. There are so many people who's done it, and it is not easy. But it's getting that foot in the door is the most, I think, important part of as an international student, because I've heard stories where if you're an international student, you basically are in a second pile. Your CV doesn't get even looked at until an employee can't find what they're looking for in the sort of the from anyone from the UK. So I understand even from an employer's point of view, because why would you spend and put more effort into sorting out visas, etc., if you could just get someone who does the job here, and especially if you don't know someone. So hence why relationships, getting it there, so you have that extra bit of push coming through different is extremely important.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, that's really useful. I think it's about being honest about these conversations as well, and sometimes acknowledging that it is just difficult, but you can power through. It's not going to be easy. Just have to keep going here. But it's good to talk about it rather than, I think some people like to sweep it under the brush like it doesn't happen, but it is an uphill battle from the start. What I was going to ask you now, a bit different, right? Because you mentioned earlier, you have all these conversations at the dinner table with your parents. It's quite an exciting time at the moment in the world, right? What I was going to ask is AI. Okay, now I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because you've seen, before you were in the architecture world, now you're in real estate and stuff. Do you think that all the progress that we're making in the world is going to advance prop tech, AI? Is it starting to have an influence already, Aqeel, or do you think it will come in the future?
To be honest, I'm an advocate of getting technology in as soon as possible, because it makes life easier, makes things faster. There's no something that I would take to do a couple of hours to do. I could get it done in a few minutes if I had the relevant tools. So I believe it's already part of us. It's part of the technology. It's still in its infancy, but there is a lot of potential for it to really blow up and really make a difference in how we work, how things are done, how efficient we are, etc. And I think lots of people, I guess, lots of people are worried that AI is come and steal their job, etc. But I think what's important is staying creative, because people who would survive this AI boom is people who could think differently, adapt to different scenarios. I'm not saying I'm like that. I might not be. I guess I'll let my colleagues decide. But I'm saying something important to keep in mind. What I keep in mind is you need to be creative. You need to have that extra thing that AI might not be able to give out. That human sort of touch that sometimes you think. So it is quite important just to stay in front of this, not reject technology, because that's a losing battle. You've seen a lot of companies have lost that battle in the last few years. So not to reject technology, just embrace it, see how it can make your workflow better, and just crack on and stay ahead, basically.
It's very interesting starting to use it already. I use it a lot in my business, initially for the back of house stuff, but especially anything to do with data entry. I just think it's really fantastic, much faster once you get it going than a human being doing it. So in that sense, great. However, I don't really see it replacing, as you said, they're going to take our jobs. I don't think they're really going to take the role of a development manager yet. Do you agree?
No, I agree, because it's, like I said, I don't know whether I'm doing it. I'm not going to toot my own horn, but yeah, you need to be creative. And like I said, my job entails solving problems. Maybe you'll have an AI that solves all the problems, and you don't need a development manager anymore. But until then, you just need to stay in front, give that extra edge that your clients want, extra bit of thing that your client wants, and basically try and stay ahead of the curve as much as possible. Embrace it. I'd say I'd say embrace it as much. The latest technology, use it, figure it out, play around with it. You won't know what you're doing, but if you're ahead, you'll get used to it, and you'll be part of your day-to-day workflow.
Very, very cool. All right, that's interesting. Now, the basically kind of winding down a little bit here, but I like to be positive because there's a lot of doom and gloom. We've been through a lot of stuff, right? We've been through COVID. The market sentiment's been here nor there. Now, I feel, time of recording this, 2024, July, right? I think that it feels in London, especially when we're talking about the market, it feels like things are picking up, things are more positive. Is that something that I've plucked out of the air? Am I hallucinating, or do you feel as well quite positive at the moment? Do you think the market's going in a better direction than it was before, Aqeel, in terms of things happening? You're seeing more projects. Do you feel more confident?
Yeah, no, like yesterday's news actually is a good sign of the Bank of England reducing the rates.
Yeah,
it's a good sign, obviously. But like what we see is if there is a good project to be done, the people are willing to invest. It's tougher than an easy market, so you need to really work hard to get things to a profitable, make things viable at the end of the day. But no, I definitely think we are getting to the end of it, and we will have some really good years going forward. And it's these years have been at least for me, the last year has been a huge learning curve. It's selfishly enough, it's where you start off with fire, so you know how to deal with fire in the future. So I'm not saying every cycle is going to be the same, but at least you know some of the precursors, how you dealt with different things. So it's a really good learning curve, especially for like junior staff like us, just coming into the industry. But so I definitely see the market picking up quickly. Looking at the pipeline, looking at everything coming across, there's a few different markers that need to sort itself out, but it'll get there. I'm positive.
I hope you feel positive. That's good. And the last question that I was going to say from me is maybe in terms of professionally, what are you excited about going forward at the moment? What are you excited about?
Just change in how people work and live. Like it's going to create some really cool spaces, really cool projects. Really, like at the end of the day, I got into architecture development is to appreciate this real asset, basically. Actually, to see something that's actually there and say, oh, I've been part of that project, or I've designed that project for an architect. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to evolve, how we're going to move forward as a country, as human, if you put it in a much larger scale. Because when COVID came in, people were like, oh, people aren't going back to the office. That gave like developers like us a whole different question of what do people want? So it's because we are designing for people, designing for creating space for people to work and live. That's what I'm excited to see, how we're going to evolve with AI, with work patterns, how future cities work, etc. Just seeing what that evolution is going to be like. We've come a long way, and looking forward to the next how many so years, basically, as long as I'm in the industry. But
I'm sure you will be. Now, the last thing before you go, because I ask all these questions, right? But I think it's often unfair. I get to ask all the questions. Maybe you have a question for me, and you can ask me whatever you want. And so I like to spring it on people so I get a real question. for that. Is there anything, because we spoke once or twice now, that you'd like to ask me, pick my brains on, get my opinion on at all?
I would say no. Like what I would like, maybe if you could, you've spoken to a lot of different people in the industry, and like if there was like a few qualities that you see, and I believe you've been in recruitment as well a bit.
Yeah.
If I'm correct. Yeah.
Okay.
That was a bit. Just sort of like different qualities. Maybe it helps the listener understand what different, like you've spoken to really senior people, to everyone. What if you've noticed any really, I don't know, qualities that people can work on that people like, or
Yeah.
is it everyone's uniqueness is what's important? I don't know.
Yeah. So I think, especially, maybe we talk about it more in the development, property, real estate, and maybe we'll talk about the qualities of people that I speak that come from architecture to go into that, because it's very interesting. So a lot of people, again, like I said before, have a bad day and they go, oh, screw this, I'm going to get more money and work for a developer. And it doesn't work that way straight away. In theory, you can earn more, right? I mean, you still can earn a pretty buck if you're a partner at Foster's and Partners, right? You can still earn a few pounds. But I think the misconception is going into it for the money. So I think sometimes money in the back, okay, is fine. But really, the people that I see go far in property development, it's exactly like you said. They have a different thing. They care about good design, but they're not precious about doing it. And they like the overview. They like projects. They're quite organized. They're quite meticulous. It's quite methodical. It's very different. It's project management. And it's skills I see a lot that people do really well. And then making decisions as a quality that I see, making decisions a lot. And I'm being generic. Yeah, I'm like you mentioned, Quadrant are being really good employers, and I'm glad you're enjoying it well, right? But when I speak to people who are looking for an architect to come to a developer, right? The people that don't go to the end, they're not the ones asking about the 9 to 5. And that's not to say you don't get a break, but really in development, when you've got a project, sometimes you have to be on site early in the morning. You have to do what it takes to get there, and you have to just make it happen, right? So I see and that's the kind of people that do really well from my experience in property and real estate. They just get it. They're just on it. They're driven, right? And it's very, very different. So the types of questions that those people ask me behind the scenes when they're looking for it, when I've recruited in property or real estate, it's always been about what's the project, what's the scope, what's my role, who's the company, what's my involvement, right? Whereas in architecture, it tends to be more about how do the projects look like, what's the work-life balance, what's this, what's that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a distinction in attitude. So that's number one. And then when I've done podcasts with people who have gone, like yourself, and made the journey, they tend to be quite methodical, analytical, well-considered, and quite thoughtful. Not that architects and designs aren't. A lot of them are, but you just asked me what the common qualities are. And so I always think it lends itself more real estate to project management, like you say, having that skills is very different than design. It's about the overall picture. And you touched upon it. You said my role is really dynamic. I think especially when you're entering real estate and development, it is very much like that. I had one role years ago for a real estate property developer. I was looking for a part one architectural assistant-esque. And some of the responsibilities were like being the receptionist. And it was really interesting because it really wasn't about that. But what they were looking for is someone who will just throw themselves into the practice. But because that line was in there, it put a lot of people off. And I learned a lot from that, really. And the person that got the job in the end was just like, I will do whatever it takes. And was that person on reception a lot? Nah, hardly ever. They just picked up a call once in a while. But that's what it took to get through the door. And I think you've got to have that attitude of not being precious. That's the word I
Yeah.
want to say. You know, and also the last misconception that I see, I'm slightly changing the question. You asked me about the common trades, but I'm just doing a bonus one, right? Misconceptions that people have when they go to real estate. I think a lot of people think that they first role, they're going to be on shitloads of money. Excuse my language. Sorry. I know it's my own podcast, but I shouldn't swear. But they think they're going to be on loads of money, right? And it's not like that. You have to work your way up and prove yourself. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions as well. So I could speak to a design architect at a good place and they go, I want to go to a developer and I want to be on 80K. And I'm like, okay, what are you on now? And they're like, 45K. And I'm like, you got to wake up to the real world. Stop being so cuckoo. You know, you got to build yourself up, because that's the other thing I was going to say. When you go to a developer, right, you learn real estate, you're learning new skills, right? Yeah. They see the potential in you, but you haven't done it before, have you? So you got to prove yourself that you can do it. And not everything you do that in architecture, you're going to do in your new role. So it's very different. Do you agree with that last ramble at the end?
100%. Hence why I said I'm still learning. Like,
yeah.
I've been in the job a year. The things that I don't know. I've had really good, like I said, Quadrants have some really good people I can always lean on. I could always turn around and I'm like, oh, how does this work? And then ask those questions. I think something quite important is not being afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
Well. Because some people are they I don't know, they think that if I don't know something, someone's going to judge me if I ask the question. Like I've had I had my founding partner tell me, like, he's like, ask questions, always ask questions, because you can be the most senior person in the room, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and you shouldn't be afraid to gain that knowledge. So I just be inquisitive and, like you said, driven, and be ready to, I wouldn't say, be ready to get into the trenches, basically. And be ready to do whichever, like, especially at the start of your career, you can't be too precious. You need to learn, get into different scenarios, learn, and then you might have to put a few extra hours in, but and I think what's important is, you won't be able to do it unless you actually like the job. Like unless you wake up in the morning on a Monday morning and like, ooh, I can't wait to get in, or like a Sunday evening, you're like, so you need to actually like it. So it's not for everyone, I would say. Like, no matter what job you do, architecture, development, whichever. At the end of the day, you need to really, really like what you're doing. It has to be sort of a hobby.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I think that's good.
You basically pick up a phone on holiday and you wouldn't think twice. I'm not saying that's a good trait. I'm not endorsing non-work-life balance, but I'm saying it becomes such a hobby that sacrificing a bit, wouldn't really put you off.
No, I think
at the end of the day, to be successful, you need to everyone pays their dues, I would say.
Yeah, I think I've started to come around to that idea, because on one hand, work-life balance is really important, but 100%. Then there's no doubt that if you put more time in, you're more likely to get ahead quicker. That's what I'm learning now. It's kind of that's the thing, right? I'm not talking about being taken advantage of and working long into the evening. And I think that's where it gets really blurry, and that's where it's a sensitive topic, because some people can work long hours in a place they're not happy with, but that's not what we're talking about here. You're talking about, if you're passionate about something, getting that project over the line. Sometimes you're going to have to take a call right in the evening, but it might save you a lot of time the next day, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Save you a headache. It's just being passionate about that and being ready. Yeah, then it has to excite you at the end of the day, whatever you do. Life.
Yeah, I think it's ironic. When I was in a job that I didn't enjoy, I would be clock watching, and I couldn't wait to get out of there. But in a role that you enjoy a bit more, you tend to work a bit more because you enjoy it, right? That's where it can help sometimes to have a partner in real life that tells you to stop doing it. Like, get off that computer. What are you doing?
Yeah,
so maybe you rein yourself in that way, you know?
Yeah, my girlfriend would, agree with you.
There you
She's
go.
asked me a million times to get
Yeah.
off the computer while
Yeah.
on holiday, but I'm like,
Yeah.
but
Okay, you
there's a
bet.
fire. There's a fire
Yeah.
that needs to be. Yeah, but
Get off your laptop. What are you doing? We're supposed to be bloody going out. So no,
no,
there
but
is a balance with all
exactly.
these things,
You
right?
need to be smart about it at the end of the day. You shouldn't die for a job, obviously, but you need to know where you draw the line and where you be passionate and where what the right things are to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm definitely not endorsing bad work-life balance, but like you said, it's about making it a hobby.
Yeah, and maybe the last thing maybe it's about being. I like that what you said, being smart about it. And the last thing I'll say on it as well, isn't it, is that like working long hours on someone else's projects that your heart's not in it, and you know you're not going to get something out of it. That's not good, right? And you should look at that situation. And any long hours constantly like that, you should look into it. But what we've been talking about is almost be smart and think about yourself, isn't it? Will this benefit my career? Will I learn something from it? Will it get me where I want to go quicker? Right? Then maybe that's okay. Maybe there is the competition that you want to do the long hours for because right now you can do it and you think it could be really good for your career. Then give it a go. But, it's always just keep in check of things, right?
Yeah, it is a quite sensitive topic where there's no correct answer, but it depends on different.
Yeah, I think it's good to talk about it though. It shouldn't be so divisive, should it?
Yeah.
Really? And it depends what person's priorities are.
Exactly.
Because in 10 years, your family, you might think a bit differently about things. However, when you're kind of gunning it at the start, that's a good time to jump in. But anyways, I really appreciate you being here, Aqeel. Now, if the listeners, whether they watch this on video or audio, want to get in touch with you, where's the best place to find you? Where should they reach out to you on?
My LinkedIn would be the best place, I would say.
Okay, cool.
Easiest place.
Yeah. All right. So find you on LinkedIn. That's Aqeel Sourjah. And I'll put the link in the bio. Get in touch with you there. A Quadrant Estates, Quadrant. Love it. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, I really appreciate it. Been a fantastic guest. Stay on the stage for 1 second while I say thank you to the audience. Thank you for being here. I'm glad. Hopefully you enjoyed this. We got more content coming. I've been having a little break. Been doing other stuff in the business, but I'm back and we've got some in-person things coming, some live streams and some non-live streams like this, but they're just as good. They're just as good. And we've got lots of stuff coming as well. So stay around for more content. But have a great day wherever you are. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you have some comments, whack them down. I might look at them. I might forget. But maybe put a comment anyways. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.